Story time about how this guy was cheating on his girlfriend with me. So a little background information, I was 15 and in 10th grade. And one day one of my friends, Josh, decided to expose this kid named Caden because this guy, Caden, posted on his Snapchat story, anybody who's 14 and younger, unadd me. I find it so weird that you little girls are swiping up on my stories calling me cute. So my best friend Josh decides to expose this man and he's like, weren't you just hanging out with a 12-year-old the other day? Make it make sense. So, I only add Caden because I was gonna tell him that he's gross and disgusting for hanging out with 12-year-olds. But after he sent me a picture of his face saying hi, yeah, I immediately fell in love with this man. I know this looks bad. Trust me. I know. Anyways, when I started talking to this kid, I really thought that he was on some fuckboy type shit. He was actually super sweet and really kind.
Bruh.
Like, he never asked me for nudes or anything. He also told me that he was single, so him and I start flirting. And y'all, I really thought that this man was about to be my husband. Now, of course, I low-key doubted him a little bit, so I ended up taking screenshots of every one of our messages. Well, him and I had never actually met in person, but we did have plans to meet up that weekend. So a few days before him and I are supposed to meet up, all of a sudden he literally went ghost. I didn't hear from him all day. And then when I go to Snapchat him, bro has me blocked on almost everything. He had me blocked on Instagram as well, but he had 2 accounts on Instagram and he forgot to block me on the one. And Instagram really snitched on this man because when I clicked on his Instagram, it had the suggested accounts. Some girl with a profile picture of him and her popped up. And she had their date in her bio. They have been dating for a whole fucking year.
Don't be shocked. You're shocked? You're shocked?
So obviously I'm gonna tell her that her man was cheating on her, but whenever I add her on Snapchat, she immediately sends me a message that says, if this is about Caden, I don't want to hear it. So instead of talking to her about Caden, I literally just send her all of the screenshots from these past 2 weeks that him and I have been talking. The only thing I said after that was, he's been cheating on you with me. So then she literally just responds with a video of them and she's like, okay, thank you. And I'm like, okay. I mean, I personally wouldn't stay with him, but to each their own. Anyways, so fast forward, they're still together and I'm still blocked on everything. Story time about how I did the nasty with somebody else's boyfriend. Yep. Anyway, so a little background information. I was 15 years old and in 9th grade. But back in 6th grade, I met this boy who we're gonna call Darren. And back then, him and I had a little crush on each other, but we were too scared to tell each other. So nothing ever came of it. Even though I don't know what would have came of that because we were literally in 6th grade. Maybe a 2-day relationship, who knows? Anyways, so him and I kept in touch. Obviously, we weren't like besties, but we would catch up here and there and we would talk to other people as well. Well, fast forward to 7th grade. That was a pretty rough year for me. What happened, you might be asking? Well, I had been deemed the school thought because my nudes got sent around.
Kim, there's people that are dying.
And now all of these guys only wanted to do the nasty with me. The worst part is like I was still super innocent, right? I only sent them because I really liked this kid. And it was one of those situations where I felt pressured to send them because I didn't want him getting bored of me and then breaking up with me or stop talking to me. Because if I'm not gonna send them, somebody else will. So yeah, worst mistake of my life. Anyways, fast forward to January of 2021. Darren puts on his Snapchat, girl best friend with a question mark. You're a hoe. Okay? Like, just say you want some pussy and get it over with. Anyway, so my lonely, desperate ass swipes up and now him and I start talking. Now, he did have a girlfriend at the time, but they ended up breaking up, which I'm thinking to myself, thank God, because bitch. I realized that I caught feelings for him real quick. But then a week later, what does he do? He goes and gets a girlfriend. Like, I just really felt like the universe was working against me in every single way possible. Anyway, so him and I continue to talk over the next 2 or 3 months, just not in the way that I was hoping we would be talking, if you know what I mean. But during March, just before my 15th birthday, him and I had hung out at the park and tell me why this man literally kissed me. And then he says to me, I've been waiting 3 years to do that. Like, oh, okay. Pretty funny that you say that because you've had a girlfriend every other freaking week. But obviously I wasn't thinking this at the time. So yes, him and I made out. And I know y'all are wondering, well, did he have a girlfriend at this time? He did. And yes, I knew it was wrong, but did I care? No. The answer is no. Not really. Now see, this situation right here is what I would call a they problem, right? Because meaning him and his girl collectively have some things that they need to work on within their relationship. That does not involve me. As far as I'm concerned, I'm perfect. They have the issues, not me. Besides, I wasn't friends with this girl, so I owed her no loyalty. Sorry, bae. Anyways, so fast forward a week after my birthday, I decided to invite Darren over, where my very strict and very, very, very religious family and I lived. But I didn't really care about the rules, so that whole no sex before marriage thing, totally out the window. I did not care. Like, it's the 21st century. That doesn't apply to us. Anyway, so he ended up bringing his friend with him, but Darren and I ended up going in the other room and we did the thing. We did. And then that whole week, his friend was hitting me up, so I ended up inviting his friend over that weekend, but his friend and I literally just made out. We didn't do anything else. Well, fast forward a month, Darren came over for the second time. Well, the second and last time. And you know, of course, we do the nasty. And after he left, I was feeling super insecure because I really, 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 really liked him, but he wouldn't leave his girl for me. So me being upset and emotional, what do? I threatened him. I tell him that either he's gonna break up with his girlfriend or I'm gonna tell her everything. And then guess what he did? He blocked me. Yep. And when I say he blocked me on everything. He blocked me on his socials, he blocked me on her socials. Like, he was not playing games with me at all. But it's like, if you love your girl that much, why are you doing shit with me?
I know I be doing some fucked up things. What I do? But you did a fucked up thing.
That's the real question here. Like, be so for real. But to be honest, I think she found out right away because they broke up literally 2 days later. But fast forward, both of them are super on and off still. And to be honest, I don't really think about him too much anymore because I have a new man and he is literally better than Darren in every single way possible. Even better in bed. Moral of the story, y'all, it is not about the size of the boat, it's about the motion in the ocean. I'm just kidding. That was a quote that was left at the end of this story time. Y'all crack me up. Story time about how my boyfriend cheated on me and the girl tried to get her cousin to fight me. So a little background information, I was 14 and in 9th grade, and one of my friends had sent me a picture of my boyfriend, who we are going to call Julio, with another girl. And my boyfriend and I are neighbors, so I told him to meet me outside. I confronted him and I was like, why are people sending me this picture of you with another girl? Like, are you cheating on me or something? Now, let me tell y'all something, okay? Never ask somebody to their face if they are cheating on you. Never. Now, if you have physical evidence, like proof of them cheating, yeah, ask them to see if they'll lie about it, duh. Like, we all have to do that. But if you do not have physical proof, do not ask them if they are cheating on you.
Stupid.
Like, the whole entire reason that they are cheating on you is because they want to eat their cake and have it too. Anyways, so I confront him, and just like any other person, he has a long list of excuses. He's like, oh my gosh, absolutely not. That girl is crazy. That picture is from a long time ago when her and I were dating.
Hey, that's pretty good.
You know, I'm not gonna lie, that is actually one of the smarter excuses I've heard, because at that point you're gonna be like, oh, okay, they used to be in a relationship. You're not gonna ask her. Like, that's weird, at least to me. I don't want anything to do with anybody's ex-girlfriends.
Fuck no. And I'ma stand on it.
Anyways, so fast forward a few months, I decided to send that girl a friend request on Facebook, and she accepts it, and then she posts a story tagging who? My boyfriend. So then I kindly ask her if she's dating him, and then she goes, that's none of your fucking business. So me, on the other hand, you know, still trying to be the calm one because there's no reason to be hasty about the situation. I tell her that him and I have been dating and that I think he's cheating on me with her. Her and I get into a very heated argument when, like, girly, the whole point of this was not to argue. I just want to know if my man is cheating on me with you. Like, I hate when the side pieces get an attitude. Like, girl, the chances are after I find out that he's cheating on me with you, you can just have him. Because I am not a f***ing raccoon and I do not dig out the f***ing garbage, and he is garbage. Absolutely not. Anyway, so after a few hours, I end up calling my man, who was low-key never even my man in the first place, and I kicked his ass to the curb. And he got mad that I messaged this girl. You know what I hate even more than the side piece getting mad whenever you confront them? When your boyfriend gets mad at you for catching him cheating. Like, yes, baby, I went through your phone, / texted that girl. Like, cry about it to the side, not me, because I do not have time to deal with that. The next day, a girl shows up at my ex house. So I'm getting super nervous that this girl's gonna try to come to my house and start something with me. Well, fast forward to the next day, my best friend comes over to my house and there was a car sitting in the middle of the road, very close to my house. And my best friend kept telling me that we needed to leave. But you know, my dumbass was like, no, we're not going anywhere, blah, 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 blah. It's nothing. Well, it was something. Because the girl who went over to my ex's house pulled up on us. And she got out of the car and tried to fight me. And yeah, it turns out that that girl was the cousin of the girl that he was cheating on me with. Look at him, classy, keeping it in the family. Go off, sis. The girl that he was cheating on me with finally snapped out of her delusion because she found out that she was getting cheated on by my ex with her cousin. Her and I talk and she's like, listen, if she tries to pull up on you again, let me know and I'll come and I'll beat her ass. Well, fast forward, that girl ended up having a baby at 16 or 17. And I don't know if it's his or not because after a few weeks, she stopped coming around. And the girl that I originally had beef with, well, actually, let me rephrase that. The girl who originally had beef with me started dating my ex again. Him and I haven't talked since that day, but when he sees me, he literally always stares at me. And he sees me like every day, duh, because we're neighbors. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm still in love with him, but that is the way life goes.
Story time about my toxic ex-best friend. So a little background information. I had a very close guy friend who we're gonna call Max. Now, Max was 2 years older than me, but due to our families being super close, him and I became best friends. Growing up, I saw him as kind of an older brother. And then eventually, as we grew up, I saw him as my best friend. Until I realized that he was actually a terrible person. And I missed all of the signs that he was not a real friend. Like one, our first fight, I told him something that I didn't want anybody else knowing. And what do you know, right after I tell him, my family knows, his family knows, my crush knows, all of our friends know. After this, I probably should have distanced myself, but he apologized and we became friends again. That was sign number one. Sign number two, his huge change in attitude. 1 second, he would be extremely rude to me, and then he would be this really sweet and caring guy, and his apologies were the best. So it was really hard not to forgive him. He was like a master manipulator. Number three, we only talked whenever it was convenient for him. Like seriously, we would never talk unless he needed something, like for part two. Part two about my toxic ex-best friend. I think we left off on sign number 3, which was the only time that we would talk was when it was convenient for him. He would never reach out, which left me being the one who was constantly trying to preserve our friendship or whatever was left of it. Like, all of our messages were literally me, and it made me seem really needy, and like I was putting in way too much effort because he would literally answer with the most simple messages. Like, yeah, okay, sure. And he would only talk to me whenever he wasn't with his friends. Sign number 4. It felt like he was embarrassed of me. Now, I know that I was 2 years younger than him, but we were still friends, and I really don't think that's that much of a difference. Like, he would never want to be seen with me. The last sign, he would literally always talk about me behind my back. And I thought this was just rumors at first, until finally several people told me that it was not a rumor. He would say things like, oh, she's ugly, she's so immature, she's annoying and childish, she's so annoying. And then I finally decided to cut him off. Because if the bad outweighed the good, was it really worth keeping that person in my life? Story time about my boyfriend's girl best friend. So a little background information, I was 15 and in 9th grade. And my boyfriend Jaden and I have been together for 2 years. In the beginning, everything was great, and then we went over to his best friend's house, which I didn't realize that his best friend was a girl. And at first I liked her. Her name was Anita, and she was super funny, super nice. Well, fast forward, it started to become a routine where he would drop me off at my house and then I would call him and he wouldn't pick up until like the third time that I called him, and then he would be like, "What's up? I'm hanging out with Anita." And I felt super weird because while we were on the phone together, him and Anita were in the car just talking to each other, not even acknowledging me. So then the one day I asked him if him and I could hang out, and he said that he wasn't going to bring Anita. Well, he pulls up and guess who's sitting in the back seat? Anita. And they were playing sexual songs, which made me feel super uncomfortable. And she didn't say one word to Jaden the whole time, but she had so much to say to him while we were on the phone. Like for part 2. Part 2 about my boyfriend's girl best friend. So, like I said, he said that he wasn't going to bring Anita with him, and then he pulls up and guess who's in the car? So, fast forward 8 months, Jaden and I are doing super good. And the one day we're driving around and he mentions that he has to pick someone up. Yep, Anita and her friend. So fast forward, we picked them up and I was feeling super uncomfortable and pissed off because Anita's like rubbing his shoulders and stuff like that. And then they dropped me off at my house. Well, not even 10 minutes later, they get into a car crash. Literally 10 minutes down the street from me, so the girls walk to my house. So we're sitting in the garage, and the girls are talking about how long they've known Jaden for, blah, 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 this and that, and how he drives super careful when Anita's in the car because he really cares about her. So I told Jaden that I'm not okay with him hanging out with Anita. And of course, when I text him, he's drinking with Anita. So then he starts calling me a bunch of names. Jaden and I are still together and we have a 9-month-old daughter. He still hangs out with Anita and I still feel weird about it, but I guess I'm just gonna have to.
Story time. Would you call this cheating? So a little background information. I was 16 and a sophomore in high school, and I was dating this guy who we're gonna call Tom, right? When we started dating, everything was super good. But a little bit into our relationship, I started to get the ick. Anything and everything he would do would literally irritate the hell out of me. So at that point, I told him that we should take a break. So we did. Well, while we were on this little break, I decided to go out with my cousin the one night. And she had brought this guy who she was talking to at the time. We're gonna call him Jake. Jake and I had the same classes in school, but we never really talked to each other. Well, I started to get to know him throughout the night, and I realized we had a lot in common. I felt like he was flirting with me, so I decided to flirt with him. When we got home, I had told her how much I really liked Jake. We ended up FaceTiming and falling asleep on the phone together. We all hung out again the next day, and I invited him back to my house. Like for part 2. Would you consider this cheating? Part 2. So like I said, we all decided to hang out again the next day. It was really cold out, so I invited everybody back to my house. And when we got back to my house, we were watching horror films. And I was cuddling next to Jake on the couch. And listen, I wanted to kiss him really bad, but Tom and I had just gotten done with our so-called break. So I decided to be loyal and not do that. Well, a few days after Jake and I talking, I realized that I wanted to be with him and not Tom. So I decided to end things with Tom, and now Jake and I have been together for 1 year and 2 months, and we couldn't be happier. But every time that we bring up Tom, Jake always tells me that I cheated on him. Would you consider what I did cheating? Story time about how my best friend kissed the guy that I liked right in front of me. So a little background information, I was 14 and in 8th grade. And we're gonna call my best friend Sophia. We were in a friend group of 3. And the other person in our friend group, his name was Josh, and that just happened to be the boy that I really liked. And Sophia knew how much I liked him. Like, I would tell her all the time how excited I was, you know, that we were hanging out. And she would be like, "Oh my god, I'm so happy for you. Like, you guys would be so cute." Just a bunch of fake shit. So the one day we're all sitting in our free period, super bored, and our friend Dylan says, "Hey, why don't we play spin the bottle?" With a water bottle, of course. So it was us 4 and a few other kids from our class. Well, Sophia decided to spin the bottle first. And of course, who does it land on? Josh. And I'm sitting back like I have nothing to worry about. My best friend wouldn't do that to me. Well, of course, I was wrong. I thought she was going to apologize, but after she gave me a very smirky smile, well, they started hanging out more and I felt extremely left out, so I just decided to forgive her. Story time about how my neighbor killed my dog. So a little background information. When I was about 3 years old, my parents got me a German Shepherd. And my neighbors who lived next to us absolutely loved our dog. And so did their kids. Like, their dad literally put a doggy door in the fence, so that way our dog could go back and forth from our house to his house. Well, when I was about 8 years old, my neighbors decided to sell their house. So he told us that he had to take out the doggy door because the people that were buying his house hated animals.
Well, the people who had just bought his house, they ended up moving in before he could take out the doggy door. So our new neighbors asked us if we could put like a piece of plywood in front of the door so that way our dog couldn't get through. And they said that they would do the same to their side of the fence. So my dad said, yeah, he put a piece of plywood in front of there. Well, my dog, Gabe, the one night that my brother let him out, he ended up getting the plywood off of the doggy door. Well, my brother literally had to crawl through the doggy door to get the dog before one of them saw him in the yard. Like part 2 about how my neighbors killed my dog. So like I said, my brother let the dog out and my dog got the piece of plywood off of the door. And my brother had to crawl through the doggy door to get my dog out of our neighbor's yard. So that way our neighbors wouldn't wake up and know that he got through. But whenever my brother went to go get Gabe, he realized that my neighbors didn't even have a piece of plywood on their side of the fence or anything. So my brother told my dad, and my dad went over there the next day to talk to them. And he pretty much said, I'm not going to have a piece of fucking plywood on my side of the fence if you're not going to be doing anything on yours to prevent my dog from going into your yard. And they were like, oh, well, your old neighbors never took out the doggy door. And my dad was like, that's not our fucking fault. Well, then our new neighbors said, if your dog all of a sudden becomes sick or just does not come back, don't be surprised. My dad decided to replace the door himself. Well, once Gabe realized that the doggy door was gone, when we would let him outside, he would literally just sit there and bark at the fence. Well, 2 weeks later, Gabe ended up passing away, and we found out it's because our neighbors were giving him rat poison. Crazy story time about the girl that my dad was having an affair with. So a little background information. My mom and my dad had been married for 10 years, and they had 3 children. Me, who's the oldest, I'm 16, and then my 2 younger sisters. Well, since I was 12 years old, I've lived with my grandma because of some personal issues that went on at home. Well, because I lived with my grandma, I barely ever saw my family because she lived like an hour away. So I was never in any family photos or anything like that. Well, when I was 15, my dad started coming to my grandma's every Friday and taking me out for pizza. And I thought it was because he just wanted to spend time with me. Well, a few months after he started taking me out for pizza every Friday, I found it really odd that he was getting a hotel for the whole weekend and only seeing me on Fridays. So I had talked to my grandma about it. So my grandma told me that he was having an affair. And she said that she didn't care because she absolutely despised my mom. I didn't tell my dad that I knew because I just thought that it would cause issues between us. Well, the next Friday he came up and we went to the pizza place like for part 2. Part 2 about the girl that my dad was having an affair with. So like I said, a few weeks later, on a Friday, he takes me out for pizza again. Mind you, we go to the same pizza place every single Friday. Well, we sit down, we're waiting for our pizza, and I notice that there's this girl who keeps staring at me. And I'm like brushing it off, thinking that she's just one of those girls who has an RBF, resting bitch face. So once we were done eating, my dad went to pay. But the pizza place that we were at, they only accepted cash and not card. My dad had to go to the bank, which was like 2 doors down, so it really didn't matter. As soon as he got up and walked out that door, the girl who was staring at me the whole time came straight over and sat down where he was sitting. I'm like, hi. And she just starts going off on me, but not so everybody could hear. She's like, what the fuck is your name? Like, is he cheating on me? Blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I'm his daughter. She said, no, you're not. He showed me pictures of his daughters before. Like I said before, I wasn't in any family photos. Like for part 3. Part 3 about the crazy ass girl that my dad was having an affair with. So like I said, she comes over, she sits down. She thinks she's confronting me about being just some random girl that my dad's cheating on her with. And then like I had said earlier, I was not in any family photos because I had lived with my grandma for years. So she was like, oh, like, no, he showed me pictures of his kids and stuff like that. So because she thought that I was lying, she went up and tried to fight me. But I grabbed this bitch by her hair and I fucking dragged her. Of course, while I'm beating the shit out of her, my dad walks in. It's like, oh my god, what are you doing to her? Let her go, blah, blah, blah. Everybody else is freaking out at this point. We get kicked out. The cops get called. She goes to jail because originally she put her hands on me. And I decided to press charges, even though my dad begged me not to. So then I confronted him about the fact that he only came up once a week to spend one Friday with me, but he got a hotel and spent the whole weekend with her. So now I still live with my grandma. I don't see my dad anymore. He's still having an affair with this girl. I'm still really pissed off about it, so I kind of just want to tell my mom what he's doing. Story time about how I was sexually harassed twice while working at Walmart. So a little background information. This all happened last year. So originally I was working in a warehouse, but whenever COVID hit, lost my job, I had to get a new job. So I applied at Walmart in the electronics section because they paid more money, period. And on my second day, I finally went and started working in electronics. So they had asked some of the employees to show me around. So while this one employee was showing me around, he took me to the back where the photos were. Well, whenever I got back there, this employee named Terry said, oh, she's mine. I just laughed and brushed it off because I felt super uncomfortable. and awkward. And he knew I was underage because my name tag was yellow. But even after that, he still kept coming up to me, calling me weird names, just being a total creep. Like, he would keep coming up to me and get super close to me to the point where I could literally feel him fucking breathing on my face. So of course I told my manager about it. They said he's done this before, so I was like, why the fuck is he still here? So they moved me to garden. And while I was working in the gardening section, I met this guy named Jordan. Like for a part 2. Part 2 of how I was sexually harassed twice while working at Walmart. Something I forgot to mention in the first part, I reported Terry several times and they still did nothing about it. So like I said, then I met this kid Jordan, him and I started getting close, and work actually started to become fun. Well, finally, after a month, we decided that we were going to go out to lunch during work. So the day that we went out to lunch, he kept telling me that he needed to tell me something. But he was like beating around the bush the whole time. Like for some reason, he just couldn't get out what he wanted to tell me. But then he kept trying to change the subject like he wasn't the one who brought it up in the first place. I should have took that as a red flag before we went to lunch, but I didn't. So he keeps going on about it in the car, right? And then he's like, I'm not really 20, I'm 25 turning 26. So then for some reason after that, whenever he saw my mood change, this guy has the audacity to start touching my legs, fucking rubbing my inner thigh and shit. I kept telling him to stop. I was like, what the fuck are you doing? So then I told him I'm getting out of the car. And he says, I'm not gonna let you like for part 3. Part 3 of how I got sexually harassed twice while working at Walmart. So like I said, he wouldn't let me out of the car, but then we got back to work. And then he had the audacity to keep asking if I was okay when he literally just sexually harassed me in the car. So I went to the bathroom, literally had a whole fucking mental breakdown. I called my mom to come get me because I was not finna stay there. So the next time that I went back to work, I grabbed my stuff and I gave it to one of the workers to go and give to a manager and tell them that I was quitting. Well, one of the managers caught me walking out the back door and she was like, what's wrong? So I immediately broke down. I started telling her what was going on. And then a crowd of people came around us being nosy as fuck, listening to what I was saying. And she was like, you're not quitting. I'm going to take care of this. So she sent me home and she said that she would call me whenever it was taken care of. So 2 days goes past. I'm like, why the fuck hasn't she called? So then I call and I found out that she fired me. So I reported everything to Walmart ethic team and they just closed my case. They basically didn't do shit about it. Oh, and Jordan wasn't really a manager. He was a supervisor. Should I try to take this to court? Storytime about how I almost got kidnapped at a grocery store. So a little background information. I was 16 and it was during the summertime. And I was super excited because I had just got my license. But my parents had this idea that if they made me drive around and do all their errands, that I would be a better driver. So I was pretty much like their BITCH. Anyway, so the one night my mom wanted to make this recipe that she saw on TikTok. And she didn't have the right seasonings for it. So who did she tell to go to the store? Yours truly. Me. And on Sundays, the mini market that was in our town would close at 4 o'clock. So I had to drive like 30 minutes away to the nearest Target. And when I got there, I had to park in the back. Because they had like 10 handicap spaces up front. Another 10 for when you sit there and they bring your shit out to you. And another 5 whenever you're picking something up that you already ordered. But in all honesty, that didn't bother me because I had never heard about any girls getting trafficked at a grocery store. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how I almost got kidnapped at a grocery store. So like I said, I parked all the way in the back of the parking lot. I mean, okay, not all the way in the back, but I was damn near close. So I go in and I'm not too familiar with this Target. I've only been here a few times because the mini market in my hometown is usually the one that I go to. So I'm looking around and I realize that there's this little girl following me. But it seemed like she was more like keeping an eye on me. Like she would stand like 20 feet behind me, but just like stare at me, you know, peek through the aisles. And she had did that for like 10 minutes. But whenever I finally went up to the checkout, she was gone. And this woman came up to me. She was like, oh my gosh, have you seen my daughter? She was running around the store. I don't know where she is. So I described the little girl to her that I saw. And she was like, yeah, that's her. I can't find her. Will you please help me look for her? And I didn't have the time for this because my parents were going to wring my neck. But I said, okay. Part 3 about how I was almost kidnapped at a grocery store. So like I said, she asked me to help look for her daughter. And I was like, I'm going to go tell a Target employee. And she was like, no, don't worry. They're all already looking. They have security all over the place. And she was like, will you help me check the parking lot? Because I don't know if she left. She was like, I've been having them look for the past 10 minutes. So I didn't think anything of this because I didn't think that some lady would try to kidnap me. So I went into the parking lot with her and I'm like, okay, where do you think she would have went? Like, did you drive here? Did she maybe go to the car? And she was like, no, we live like 5 minutes down the road. Do you think that we could get in your car and drive around? And I said, yeah, because I thought that it would speed up the process. And my dad's truck was really high off the ground. So while we're walking, I'm like, I think someone's under my car. And she was like, what? No, it's probably just the shadow. And I'm like, no, there's someone under my car. So I turn around to walk back into the store and she starts like pulling my arm towards my car. So an employee called the police whenever I went in there, and long story short, they were trying to kidnap me. Story time about how my aunt kidnapped my dog. So a little background information, I was 14 and in 8th grade. I had a 4-month-old puppy that I would take care of because since I wanted the dog, my parents were like, you have to take care of him, blah, 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 blah. So put him in the crate, went to school, came home, thought everything was good, until my dog is missing. So now I'm like, what the fuck? Because it's literally a 4-month-old puppy. Anyways, I searched around the house to see if he maybe escaped or he was hiding under the beds or something, but he was nowhere to be found. So I asked the neighbors to keep a lookout for him and even put up missing posters everywhere. And when my parents got home, I told them the situation and they were like, oh, honey, he probably ran away, but he'll probably be back tonight. Yeah, fast forward 5 hours, he still wasn't home. So my dad was like, go to sleep. He'll be back in the morning. So I went to sleep, or I tried, but then I couldn't sleep, so I got up and got some melatonin. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my aunt kidnapped my dog. So like I said, my dad was like, go to sleep, and I went to try to go to sleep, but I couldn't because my dog was freaking missing. So I go downstairs to get some melatonin when I hear my dad talking shit on the phone to my aunt. He was talking about something with the dog, but my dumbass starts walking across the floor and all of a sudden the floor creaks, so I run upstairs, get back into bed, and go to sleep. So the next day after school, I tell my dad I'm going to go to my aunt's house because she didn't live too far away, and I thought, okay, well, maybe she's seen him run around her neighborhood, whatever. And he was like super off about it at first, but he was like, fine, whatever, go to your aunt's house. So I get to her house and I walk in and I hear dogs barking. One dog, because she didn't have any fucking dogs. And I walk over to the backyard, and what do you know? My puppy is sitting in her fucking backyard. So I brought my dog home and told my dad. And he got really mad. It turns out he didn't even want the dog in the first place, so he gave her to my aunt. He apologized and we're good now, but I story time about how my mom planned to kill me. Yes, I said my mother. So a little background information, I was 16 years old and I was in 11th grade. Now, it's not like my mom hated me my whole life, because there was a time whenever she was super happy and she did really love me. Well, it all started whenever my dad had left her. She went into this deep depression. She quit her job. She wouldn't get out of bed in the morning. She stopped cooking, stopped cleaning, and she always blamed me because she thought it was my fault that our dad left, when in reality, my dad still texts me all the time asking how I'm doing. All of a sudden, a flip switch, my mom started cooking again, going to work. I never really ate her food because it low-key looked weird. But one day I came home from school and saw her putting rat poison in my food. And I wish I was kidding, but she's fucking crazy. So I said hi, but she didn't answer me. So I tapped her on the shoulder. She turned around and put a knife up to my neck. I ran out the door, called the police. They arrested her, and now I am happily living with my father and my non-crazy story time about the toxic boy that I almost started dating. So a little background information. Him and I both met on a set of a movie that we were in. Well, a few days into filming, he asked me out. So of course I said yes. And it was literally the most amazing first date ever. So he asked for a second date, and I said yes, of course. And the second date was terrible. He literally just tried to get in my pants the whole time. So then he asked me for a third date. And for some reason I said yes, hoping that it was not anything like the second date. And he didn't show up. So I pretty much got stood up. And then he even blocked my number. So a few months go by and I end up moving in with my best friend, about an hour away from where I was living when I met him. Well, the one night she came home and told me that he had messaged her on Instagram, which I thought was funny as hell because my best friend did not swing that way. So she pretends to flirt with him and asks him to come over. So he drives an hour to our apartment, and when he walks in, he just sees me standing in the kitchen. He immediately walked out. Story time. Everybody's saying that I cheated on my ex-boyfriend, but I want your guys' opinion. So a little background information. I was a college student, and I had been with this guy who we're gonna call Jacob for about 6 months. Towards the end of his and I's relationship, stuff just started to get really boring, and every day I would get the ick from him. Now, at this time also, I had gotten a new job. While I was working, I had met this guy who we're gonna call Tim. Since I was a college student, I decided to start working more, so Tim and I would see each other literally every day. Him and I really hit it off, like straight away. Not to mention, him and I had a lot of things in common. His sense of humor was great. Well, the one night before work got out, Tim asked for my number, and I said yes. However, since I was still with Jacob, I decided that I was going to break up with him before I texted Tim. So I broke up with him. Fast forward to now, Tim and I are in a super good relationship. But now everyone's saying that I cheated on Jacob. What do you guys think? Story time about how I got my ex-toxic best friend jumped. So a little background information, I was 16 and a sophomore in high school. And like any of these toxic best friend story times, she was super jealous of me for literally no reason. She would literally try to be better than me in everything. Like when I did a sport or a club, she would join immediately right after. And it wasn't oh, I'm gonna join my best friend. No, it was, I'm gonna join so that way I can show her that I'm better than her. For example, in 6th grade, I was captain on the volleyball team, and she decided that she was going to try out her sophomore year. She played it off as if she just wanted to try it out, but then I got announced captain, and she was pissed off when she heard that. She literally blocked me on everything, and she came from a super wealthy family, so she was used to getting whatever she wanted. And my whole friend group would literally tell me, you need to stop being friends with her, she's toxic, she's this, she's that. The only thing that stopped me from being friends with her was the blackmail, like for part 2 about how I got my toxic ex-best friend jumped. So like I said, the only thing that was stopping me from not being her friend was the blackmail that she had. Every time that I pissed her off, or even just randomly, she would be like, oh, I'm gonna send this out. I'm gonna expose you. She was just overall a shitty friend. So I had an exposing account on Instagram where I would expose people in my class. It got banned, but she DM'd the account the blackmail. Little did she know it was literally me who was running it. Obviously, I didn't post it, but I showed one of my friends, and we kind of made a plan to get rid of the blackmail. So my birthday was coming up, and I was going to Disney, and my mom said that I could invite 2 friends. Originally, I wasn't going to invite Tessa, but since I had this plan, I invited her and one of my other friends. On the 3rd night, my friend and I decided to take our plan into action. Tessa was sleeping, so I went on her phone, and I went and deleted all the pictures, like for part 3. Part 3 about how I got my toxic ex-best friend jumped. So like I said, on the 3rd night, she was sleeping, so we went on her phone. I deleted all of the blackmail that she had on me, and I even went a step further and screenshotted all of the nudes that she was sending back and forth with older guys, and these guys were way older than her, like way older. And I sent them to myself and deleted the text off of her phone. Fast forward, we drop her off at her house. I stay over my friend's house, and we decide that we're going to post everything to my exposing page. And we also came up with a really good idea. Why not send this to Tessa's parents? So we sent them to her parents. And guys, when I tell you this exposing page had so many people on it, it really did. Somebody was like, OMG, like, please send a face reveal, like, I won't tell anybody. So what did I do? I sent a picture of Tessa, and that person posted it to their Snapchat story. Fast forward to the first day of school. We're outside for gym class, and 3 girls beat her ass. Storytime about how my crazy ass cousin broke up my family. So a little background information. My cousin Brandy has been married to her wife for about 16 years. And they both have 3 kids together, and I live with my brother and sister-in-law, Nora. Both of our families were super close. They were always coming over to our house, vice versa. Now, this is where you gotta keep up. My cousin Brandy started cheating on her wife with Nora's sister, Taylor. And that meant that Taylor was cheating on her boyfriend, and they had 3 kids together also. And this all started happening the night of my nephew's birthday party. They literally did the nasty that day and then showed up at different times to play it off like they weren't doing anything. And nobody really found out about any of this until Thanksgiving of last year. But the drama is still going on till this day, and it only gets worse. My cousin Brandy convinced Taylor to break it off with her boyfriend and completely leave her 3 children for her. Meanwhile, Brandy is still with her wife, like for part 2. Part 2 about how my crazy ass cousin broke up my family. So like I said, my cousin Brandy talked Taylor into leaving her boyfriend and her 3 kids for her. Meanwhile, Brandy didn't even leave her wife, and she was planning on buying a house and adopting 2 out of the 3 kids that they have. But Taylor was low-key manipulated and low-key ignored every single red flag. So she did just that. She literally broke up her family for Brandy. And to this day, Brandy is still with her wife. And you would have thought that Taylor would have been like, okay, fuck this. But no, actually, instead, Taylor and Brandy decided that they were going to say that Taylor's boyfriend beat them both so he could get sent to jail and they could still do the nasty on the low. And then Brandy twisted the whole situation of what actually went on to make my family cut me, my brother, and my sister-in-law all off. So that way she didn't seem like the bad guy. And now I'm not allowed to see Brandy's daughter, who I'm really close with. Like, she literally will track her location, and if she's even near my house, she'll be grounded. So we've Story time about how I caught my grandma with my dad. So a little background information, I was 16, and it was the first day of 11th grade. Well, my friend wanted me to come to the mall with her after school that day. She was like, screw your grandma's birthday, just come to the mall with me. So the plan was I would sneak onto my best friend's bus after school and skip my grandma's birthday. By the way, my grandma was low-key a hoe. Like, half of her kids won't even bring their husbands around her, because after she got their numbers, she would end up sending nude pictures to them. Anyway, so the end of the day rolls around and I go to my locker to get my book bag when I'm called down to the office. So I go down to the office and my mom is there to pick me up because she said that we needed to do a few things before our grandma's party. Well, my grandma was at our house getting ready and my mom forgot her wallet at home, so when we went back home, I went to go put my book bag in the house. When I walk in and I see my grandma and dad on the couch, and I'm not even gonna say what they were doing, and my mom is walking past them like she didn't see anything. So after that, I called one of my aunts and asked if I could stay with her for a while, and now I don't talk to any of them. Story time about how I saw my boyfriend propose to another girl in front of me. So a little background information. At the time, my boyfriend and I had been together for around 4 years. We had 2 kids together, and our relationship was pretty rocky. Within the first year of us dating, he would cheat on me all the time, and both times that I was pregnant, he would cheat on me also. Now, after I popped out the second kid, our relationship was going pretty well. And if you're wondering why I didn't leave him when he was cheating on me all the time, well, it was mainly because I grew up in a broken home. And remembering how hard it was on me whenever my parents broke up, I didn't want that for them. Well, over the past few months, my boyfriend had been traveling all over the country with his dad, going to meetings and stuff because he was getting ready to take over half the company. Well, fast forward, it's a Thursday, and my boyfriend has a meeting with some associates who flew in from out of state, and later that night we were supposed to get on a flight with our friends to go to the Bahamas. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my boyfriend literally proposed to another girl right in front of me. So like I said, my boyfriend had a meeting with some associates who flew in from out of town, and that night we were supposed to be on a plane to the Bahamas with our friends. So while he was getting ready for this meeting, I went and I dropped the kids off early, and he went to this meeting, and I drove our luggage over to our friend's house because they were just going to drive us to the airport. So my girlfriend and I are super pumped to go on this trip, so we decided to start drinking early, and we went somewhere to get drinks. She suggests this high-end place because the guy at the bar has a crush on her and always gives her free drinks. So we're sitting there having a really good time drinking at the bar. So while we're sitting there, we hear a bunch of clapping and cheering coming from outside. So us being drunk and nosy, we go out there to see what's going on. And what are the chances I walk out there and my boyfriend is down on one knee in front of another girl? And I'm not very confrontational whenever I drink, so I told my best friend to just take me back to her house. When we got back, it was around 6 p.m. and my boyfriend tells me that he's just gonna meet us at the airport like for part 3.
Oh, well, hello, what's up there? Guess what we're doing today? Yes, it's makeup. It's makeup. That's what I do. I don't do anything else. That's literally all I do. I'm turning myself into a scary snowman. I've got these buttons from Joann's to make them my eyes. It's stuck to the glue. That's not what I meant to do, but I kind of like it. Straight up Coraline vibes right now. Look at that. Who needs sunglasses when you have buttons? I'm just messing around. We're gonna do the latex. A lot of you were concerned about why I was putting glue on my eyebrows in the other video, and I actually got really funny duets for that. But just to let you know, I put glue on my eyebrows so that they don't get ripped off by latex. Okay, but how mentally stable do I look right now? I need to make this look like a carrot. Alright, that's a pretty ugly carrot, but we'll just go with it. I'm gonna do the mouth last because once I do it, I won't be able to talk or drink water. Okay, time to glue my mouth down. Alright, voiceover Valeria coming in here. I glued down my mouth and put buttons everywhere with liquid latex, and then I put fake blood on, and Olaf is literally shaking right now.
Story time about how my ex-boyfriend accused me of cheating on an all-girls trip. So a little background information, I was 14 or 15 around the time, and it was the summer of my freshman year. So within the last few weeks of my 8th grade year, one of the more popular boys asked me out, and we're gonna call him Carson. I wasn't like super popular at the school, but I was like a medium maybe. But I was raised in a super strict household, where the only phone that I pretty much had was one that was able to call 911 and my parents. And I especially was not allowed to be talking to boys. So Carson had the great idea of giving me his old phone, and throughout the summer, I would text him on there. Well, I started realizing him getting really toxic. Anytime that he would see my Snapchat location change, he would be like, "Where are you going? Why didn't you tell me you were going here?" So I started distancing myself a little bit from him. Also because our relationship was just moving way too fast. Within the first month of us dating, he was talking about wanting to marry me. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my ex-boyfriend accused me of cheating on him on an all-girls trip. So like I said, I started distancing myself from him because he became too attached and was just way too toxic. Well, I was also in a lot of clubs in school, and a few of them would require me to go on trips. Well, the one that I went on was an all-girls trip, and before I left, I texted Carson letting him know that I wouldn't have my phone all week. Well, on the last night of my trip, there was a girls and boys dance. There was like a group of boys from a different school that we were meeting up with, and I tried staying back at the cabin, but they wouldn't let me. So we started doing dances that required partners, so I was pretty much forced to dance with one of the boys. Well, when I came back home, I got 100 texts from Carson calling me a bunch of nasty names, and you can probably guess them. And somebody got a picture of me dancing with one of the boys, and Carson sent it to me and said, "We're done." So after that, I just ignored him. And then literally that night at 1 a.m., he was texting me saying, "I miss you, please come back to me," like for part 3. Part 3 about how my ex-boyfriend accused me of cheating on him on an all-girls trip. So like I said, I received over 100 messages from him. He got a picture of me dancing with one of the boys and said, "We're done." And then at 1 in the morning, he's like, "I miss you so much. Please don't leave me. Like, I've been doing so bad while you were gone." So of course I didn't accept his apology and I just blocked him on all my social media. And the next day I wake up to messages on my Instagram, my Snapchat, my Facebook. Like, who even uses that? Unless you're talking to family. Well, then Carson decides to tell everybody at my school about how I'm a lying, cheating scumbag. And now, 3 years later, no good guy from my school wants to date me. So now whenever I'm talking to a guy, I have to make sure that they're not affiliated with Carson in any way. But low-key, I had a really good glow-up, so all the hot boys want to talk to me now. And Carson's pretty much still a scumbag. Storytime about the boy across the street who used to stalk me. So a little background information. My parents and I moved into a new house that was literally 5 minutes from where I used to live. But I went to private school, and almost all the other kids in my town went to the public school. So I didn't really know a lot of the kids in my town. Well, a week after we moved in, our neighbors across the street invited us to a barbecue. While we were there, I started talking to our neighbor's older son, and him and I started to get along really well. Like, in a flirty way. Their older son was a senior, I was a sophomore, and their younger son was a freshman. Well, I kind of talked to the younger son, but he was just like giving me really weird vibes. So for the next few weeks, I started hanging out with their older son a lot, and we would talk all the time. Well, the one day whenever I went over their house, it was super weird. His younger brother kept saying, "Oh, I think I know you from somewhere. Like, I swear I know you." And I'm just like, okay. Well, the one morning I was waiting outside for my mom to pick me up because she worked night shifts and she would just grab me and then take me to my school. And I saw him in his window watching me like for part 2. Part 2 about the boy across the street who used to stalk me. So like I said, I saw him watching me outside his window, but I didn't want to overthink it, so I was just like, no, maybe he's looking at something else. Well, this all started a month after I moved in. Well, it started happening more frequently, so then I told his older brother. We're just gonna call the younger brother Mac. So he talked to Mac and then everything was fine for a week. Just a little information real quick. For the public school, the bus would arrive at 7:40. My private school started at 7 o'clock. So my mom would come and get me at 6:15 because my school was kind of far away. So like I said, it was a week later. Every morning that I would go outside to wait for my mom, Mac would be standing on his porch watching me. Oh, but it gets worse. So one night I was in my bedroom, right? And this is like some scary movie shit. I kept seeing something run past my window. My bedroom was on the first floor. So I told my dad about it and he put cameras outside. Well, Mac's older brother told me that Mac was always interested in my life. So me being a smart-ass bitch, I told his older brother that our cameras didn't work, like for part 3. Storytime about how my stepmom got with my boyfriend. So a little background information, I was 18 and it was my senior year of high school. And my mom and my dad got a divorce whenever I was 11 years old. My dad moved to a whole other state. My sister went with him, and then my brother and I stayed with my mom. Because my mom said it was a time where we need our mom in our lives. But to be honest, I think she just wanted child support. Anyways, after elementary school, I moved back in with my dad. And at the time, he was dating this woman who we're going to call Carol. And she was like the sweetest girl I'd ever met. I actually called her mom even though they weren't married because I was so close to her. So fast forward, they get married. I'm super happy for them. My senior year of high school, I start dating this guy named Paul. Well, since I was close with Carol, I told her about him first. After a while of him and I dating, she suggested that he should come over for dinner. So I ended up inviting him to this party that my dad hosts every year. And I was super excited. Well, I see him and Carol talking, and I'm super happy because I want him to get along with my family, like for part 2. Part 2 about how my stepmom got with my boyfriend. So like I said, I invited my boyfriend to this party that my dad hosts every year, and he starts talking to Carol, which I was super happy about because I wanted him to get along with my family. Well, during the party, him and Carol go missing for like half an hour. And there were a ton of people there, and my dad's house was big as fuck. So I was like, okay, maybe he got lost. So finally I find him, and then I asked him where he had been. Then he said that he went to the bathroom, which was extremely weird because I had already showed him where the bathrooms were on the first floor whenever he came to the party. So I was like, whatever. And then Carol came downstairs, but I didn't really think anything of it. Fast forward, I was on my way home from this tutoring class. My friend was driving me because I didn't have a car. Well, we get home and we hear loud moaning noises all the way outside, and I see Paul's car in my driveway. And I was like, well, it can't be my dad because he's out of town. So I go in, I catch them, I ask them how long it's been going on. They say since the party. So I tell my dad about it, he gives her a second chance, and then I move back in with my mom. Story time about how my boyfriend almost ruined my relationship with my sister. So a little background information. I was 16 and I was a sophomore in high school at the time. Well, we're gonna call my boyfriend Alex. And whenever Alex and I first started dating, I would literally brag to all my friends about how nice he was, about how he treated me so good. Well, fast forward a few months, him and I were still dating. And originally my sister scared him. But eventually he had been around long enough to the point where they were super cool. Well, after that, I started realizing some off things. For example, the one night he was texting me, and all of a sudden he just stopped responding. And I knew that he didn't fall asleep because he was still texting my sister. Well, that should have been the first red flag, but as we know, I am blind to seeing red flags. Anyways, I didn't want to seem jealous of my sister, so I just decided to play it cool and act normal. But him, on the other hand, like for part 2. Part 2 of how my boyfriend almost ruined my relationship with my sister. So like I said, I decided to act normal and not be jealous. But him, on the other hand, he started finding reasons for him not to like me, and he was ignoring me. Like, he was just being very standoffish. So the one day my sister decides to leave her phone open on the couch when she goes to the bathroom, and I had this fantastic idea to go through her phone. Rightfully so, like, sis, don't be texting my man more than me. That's weird. Well, when I looked, there was nothing. He was just being super nice to her. And with me, on the other hand, his texts were super dry. By the way, my sister and I are twins. But she starts laughing at her phone, and I'm like, what did he say? And they were just typing random letters to each other. She has a better sense of humor than that, so I knew something was off whenever she was laughing at it. And then she says, I have something to tell you, but you have to promise me you won't get mad. And then she tells me that he said that he likes her. Well, after being mad at her for a while, I realized it was his fault. Story time about why you should never, ever, ever do drugs. So a little background information. In my town, on the 15th of June this year, 2 girls got kidnapped in my hometown. So I kind of knew these 2 girls. I mean, they went to my school, but that was really it. Because low-key, I didn't want to be friends with them, and I kind of hated them. They were in 7th grade, I was in 8th grade, so they were probably like a year younger than me. Anyway, so it was a Wednesday, and the last time they had been seen was at 8 p.m. with a 30-year-old man. They were supposedly doing drugs outside of a McDonald's. Well, I guess this man saw that they had been doing drugs, and he wanted some. Before that, I guess he kind of eased into the question because he was like talking to them, getting to know them, and I guess he thought he had a really good shot at getting some drugs. But when he asked, they said no. So then he asked a few more times, and they finally gave them to him, but whenever they got closer, he grabbed both of them, put him in his van, and drove off. And he hid them in his house. Like for part 2. Part 2 of why you should never, ever, ever do drugs. So like I said, he asked for them again, and finally the girls decided to give him some. But when they got closer, he grabbed both of them and shoved them in his van, drove off. Well, he ended up driving to his house and decided to hide them there. Well, one of the girls' aunts posted something on Facebook saying that both of them were missing, and soon the news made an article that literally said, drug addict and her friend gets kidnapped. They went missing for like 6 days, and on the 22nd of June, they were found, but now they won't stop bragging about how fun it was to get kidnapped. And that is why, still to this day, I absolutely despise these girls. Story time about why I will never ever ride in an Uber ever again. So a little background information, I was 16 and in 11th grade. So my parents decided to go away for the weekend. They wanted to go and visit some family who lived like 2 hours away. So I decided that it was a good idea to invite my friends and my boyfriend and his friends over for a sleepover. And once we were all at my house, we realized that we were pretty bored, so we decided to go to the fair. So we decided to go to the fair around 9:15. But because we were all lazy AF, we decided to just get an Uber to the fair instead of driving. The Uber there was fine. We went, we had a super great time, and then it was time to go home. It said our Uber was going to come at 10:30, but instead it came at 10:45, which I didn't think was a big deal because Ubers are late sometimes. So we all got into the Uber, and mind you, my house was literally 15 minutes away. So I ended up taking a nap because I was really tired, and then I woke up, like for part 2. Part 2 about why I will never ever ride in an Uber ever again. So like I said, my house was only 15 minutes away, so since I was really tired from the fair, I decided to take a nap. Well, I woke up 20 minutes later, and we were in the middle of nowhere. Like, when I tell you, we were on a road that literally just kept on going. I asked my boyfriend where we were, and he said that we had been on this road for a while. So at this point, we're all texting each other, and all of our friends are saying, no, we're fine, this is the way. But then I look up my address on Google Maps, and we are 45 minutes away from my house. So then I send it in the group chat, and now everybody starts to freak out. Not to mention, our Uber driver was on the phone the whole time, but he had his AirPods in, and we couldn't understand anything that he was saying. So that's when my friend Sophie, she was in the front seat, she shoved the directions in his face, and was like, I think you're going the wrong way. So then he busts a U-turn, and he's yelling at this point on the phone. And an hour later, we make it back to my house. I have a feeling if it wasn't for my friend Sophie, we wouldn't have made it out of there. Story time about how he cheated on his baby mama with me. So a little background information. There was this boy, and we're going to call him John. John and I knew each other through one of our mutual friends. Well, 24/7, John would post sad quotes on his Snapchat story because him and his girlfriend had just broken up. So I decided that I was going to be Captain Save-A-Ho and be there for him, telling him it was okay and that everything happens for a reason. Well, eventually, John had developed a huge crush on me. Like, he would flirt with me 24/7, sending me all these cute emojis. And of course, my dumbass fell for it. So after talking for a little bit, him and I started dating. Well, the one day I was on Snapchat going through his story, and he was posting a bunch of funny memes on his story, and I was just laughing until I got to the last thing that he posted on his story. It was this picture of a baby girl saying, I can't wait to meet you from Dada. So with my crazy ass, I jumped on the phone and started cussing him out. And then he goes, what are you talking about? That's my little sister. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how he cheated on his baby mama with me. So like I said, when I confronted him about it, he said that it was a picture of his baby sister. Always with the Alabama shit. For what reason, I don't know. But he calls me the next day and he starts apologizing about everything. And then he decides to make a new Snapchat account and starts talking to me on there. Thinking that I was just gonna block his other account. He posts a picture of his baby mama. So at this point, my Virgo self and I were done with the bullshit. By the way, he's a Gemini, so if that doesn't explain it, I don't know what will. So I start dating my new man, and I commented on all of his posts. I guess I'm not surprised she's not the only bitch you're fucking with. And if you try lying, I'm going to spill the tea. Like, I just think that it's really funny how females just think that their men are so loyal. Even when you literally expose their man with every piece of evidence. Well, the girl who sent this in has a special message for all of us. I promise you that men ain't shit. Thank you for listening to my TED Talk. Story time, my best friend cheated on his girlfriend with me. So a little background information. So Gavin and I had been best friends ever since we were little. We lived in the same neighborhood, and my parents and his grandparents were like pretty close, I guess. But like everybody in our neighborhood was close with each other. And I always had a huge crush on him. And I would try to like subtly tell him that I liked him. But he would always be like, ew, don't joke with me like that. Like, that's not true. And eventually, I just kind of got the hint that that was his way of telling me, I don't like you. Stop before I tell you, in a mean way. So when we were in middle school, he was always having these like 2-day relationships with all these girls and everything. And me, not so much, because sis didn't have a glow up until she reached like her sophomore year in high school. And the thing was, I wasn't that best friend who would be like, ew, don't date her, like she's ugly or anything like that. Like, I would totally respect all of his relationships, even if they were 2 days long, but he would literally still block me. Well, the one day we were hanging out at his house, like for part 2, Part 2 about how my best friend cheated on his girlfriend with me. So like I said, the one night I was at his house and he was on my phone and he was asking me who all these guys were on my Snapchat. And I told him that I had been talking to them and he was just being super toxic. He was talking shit on every single one of them. So eventually I started dating this guy Trey, and after that he texted me saying that I was gross and everything else, when the next day he literally got a girlfriend. But weirdly enough, he didn't block me that time. He actually started texting me more, saying how him and his girlfriend were so happy together, da-da-da-da-da. And unlike him, I would be supportive. Well, the one night at 2 a.m. he came over my house and he was like, I don't have feelings for my girlfriend. And I'm like, okay, then why are you with her? And then he has the nerve to say, don't you get that I like you? Like, really? Well, eventually we cut off all communication and he was still with this girl. Well, the one night he asked me to come over and talk, and we ended up doing the nasty. And then he blocked me on everything after he said we should both leave our girlfriends and boyfriends. Well, I ended up telling his girlfriend what we did, and they also come to my family cookouts. Part 2. And I was able to get into his phone because he stole my fingerprint from when we were best friends. So I unblocked myself on all social medias, and there was an ottoman pushed against the couch, so while he was sleeping, I was able to go lay next to him. So while I was laying next to him, I took a few pictures of us, and I saved them in his camera roll, and I also sent one to his girlfriend, and it was about 1 in the morning. Well, she opened it right away, and then she started going off and would not stop calling his phone. So after that, I turned his phone off. So he started to wake up, and then we started drinking more. And then we started fooling around. And while we were doing the nasty, I took a video, but he didn't see it because the phone was in front of me. And I had his girlfriend on Snapchat. So what did I do? I sent the motherfucking video to her. So the next day, obviously, he found out what happened. So then he came over to my house to talk to me, and I told him how I was upset that she was keeping him from me. So he broke up with her and started dating me. Story time about how I broke up my best friend and his girlfriend. So it was our sophomore year in high school, and my best friend and I had known each other since we were like 8 years old. And I've always had a crush on him. Like, anytime he would get a girlfriend, I would try and break them up. And it would work. Well, our freshman year of high school, he started dating this one girl. Well, when he started dating her, he distanced himself from me because she didn't like how much time we were spending together. So a few months go by and my birthday's coming up. And mind you, within these past few months, we only seen each other like twice. And he had me blocked on all social media. Well, our parents were really good friends because we lived in the same cul-de-sac. So my mom invited him and his parents to my birthday party. So at the end of my party, my friends left and him and his parents stayed. And my parents really didn't care if I drank alcohol, so we had like a whole bottle of vodka to ourselves. So we're in the basement and we're taking shots together. Well, I got him super drunk and he fell asleep. And while he was sleeping, I went on his phone and like for part 2.